see who else is on. It's me and Marty.
Are you hooked to the Wi-Fi?
It's me and Marty.
That'll help.
That was delayed.
Well, he has a YouTube on. Have we got hooked to the Wi-Fi? Yeah.
Marty.
That'll help.
That was delayed.
Well, he has a YouTube on. Have we got hooked to the Wi-Fi? There we go. All right, now we're good.
Wow, that sounds awful.
There's Wen.
Looks like Jerry's sleeping.
Nice horse sticker.
That's right.
Does a little
You can
wavy
take
up.
my spot over here.
You went Japanese, like, smart man.
Japanese?
You're Toyota.
Oh, yeah. You like that, don't you?
Yeah, you'll drive that to your dad, and you're young. Oh, they're good.
Yeah, my dad's got one. He's having one forever, been trying to get me to switch over to them forever.
Well, I got that, my FJ,
Yeah.
it's got 210,000 miles on it. It's tight as the day I bought it. And the total number of money, the total number of dollars, I think is $900 for a rear end. And I bought it at 87,000 miles. And I read it different. That's it. Nothing with the engine, nothing with the train, nothing with water pumps, nothing.
Yeah, that's,
It's been great. And still, like I said, it's still nice.
and you take it up the mountain roads.
Absolutely, all the time. Got all bunch of scratches in it. Still echoing there. Echo.
Jerry.
I think it is, I think you're going
Jerry.
to.
I got my eye on that right now too.
Yeah.
I've been working for about a month on my phone, like I really.
Yeah, it's gonna seem pretty good for going up the hills and
Yeah,
stuff.
what, like what year am I?
16.
Oh, is that?
I don't know that last
Yeah.
year.
We're just playing with. Yeah, that's what I'm doing. We're not killing them, actually, I trade. Good video. So that's how white works. So that we can- I still love that.
Yes, too. I hated that thing.
But still, now I gotta, it does the same thing almost. Just on a short wheelbase, so.
That's, that's one thing about Dodge trucks and stuff. They turn really good
Yeah.
versus Chevy and
Yeah.
Ford.
The Ford, the 550, like this 550 we have that we built, that thing turns like a Jeep.
Cause we have that Dodge long bin, 2,500. That thing. I
Want
can't
me to
even
get out of
picture
it, turn the bottom all the way up and then turn
That's
sideways?
fine.
The Dodge trucks this year, the new ones, I don't know if you've
Oh,
been.
this is an old one.
Yeah, but the new ones, they won the GD
Is that a meat car?
luxury car, that they're like over Mercedes.
I thought it might, like the phones, but under the
And
sun, he says.
I actually was somebody that has one, and I like, oh gosh, like it did not feel like you're driving a truck. It's.
Yeah, well, I know ours, you feel like you're driving.
Yeah.
Yeah, yours.
It's like the UPS guy.
See, when I did that,
Coming down the
it let
road.
me go to all the way.
Yeah, but that's perfect, and hauling hay around and all that stuff.
Yeah, it is. We had our use on it.
They didn't even level it. You know, it was just smooth out. It's doing like this. High points and low points.
It's just got
Oh, we got a lot of people showing up.
All right, looks like we're ready to go. Anybody see Mike rolling in here last minute? So missing Mike McLaughlin.
Yeah, I think.
Still
And it's still coming out, it's gonna turn it off.
All right, well, Mike might have got held up a little bit. We'll get going. So this is the town council meeting, Town of Apple Valley on Wednesday, May 20th, 2020. It's at 6 p.m. and we'd like to call this meeting to order. And if we could all rise for the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to thank everybody for being here. We could have a roll call, please.
Debbie Copier,
Paul Edwardson here.
Marty Lisenby here.
Danny Bass present.
And I imagine Mike is running late, so we'll probably see him show up, but he's not here at this time. Mayor's Town update, we do have that pipeline going in at the T intersection. That's been promised to have that back operational by Thursday evening, so. We have a declaration of conflicts of interest. Anybody have any conflicts of interest on the agenda today?
Nope.
Yeah, first item on the agenda is consent agenda. Has anybody had a chance to look at the expenditure reports, operational budget and minutes? I've looked at them, it looks great to me.
I looked at everything.
Any questions from Denny? Anything jumps out? How about you, Paul?
Nope, this looks good.
All right. So we want to do a motion on that?
I move we approve the consent agenda.
I second.
And vote?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And discussion action items. Number one is discussion possible action on memorandum of understanding with Washington County Sheriff's Office. I've been talking to the Sheriff's Office, wanting to put together an agreement with them that gives us a better relationship and also builds in some extra patrols around here based on our direction. If we have an issue in one particular area, Speeders and Gooseberry or Bubbling Wells or on the highway, we can ask them any particular week to concentrate on an area. We've built this into our budget, about $15,000 to pay for this already. So it's already built into the budget as well. And this will help us when we have, for example, someone wanting to ignore a red tag, shut down order, or not having building permit, things like that. They'll respond and be able to do that. So I've included in some documents. We have, I'm embarrassed. I know it's Brock, but
Yeah.
I hate to call you by your first name.
You're fine.
Call him
Lieutenant Brock
Lieutenant,
Bentley.
call him Lieutenant, he'll answer to that.
Lieutenant Bentley. So anyway, we have the Sheriff's Office here. And if there's any questions on the agreement, IPEN or Brock can answer it. And I wanted him to spend a couple of minutes. We do have the next item in our packet, shows Washington County Sheriff's Office. And I'm gonna just turn it over to you to explain what we're looking at here, okay? Everybody has a copy of this.
Perfect. So what you'll see on the first page is this is the statistics for Apple Valley for a year from May 18th. So going back a year from May 18th. The first page is the traffic offenses. The second page, well, I should say all the subsequent pages after that are going to be all the calls that we responded to where an incident was assigned within the Apple Valley area. So as you can see, I mean, there's quite a few of them there. We went through the other day and kind of looked at what the average on things were. A lot of, animal issues and, suspicious things. So, things that are on the lower priority scale, but then of course we do have the traffic accidents and things out on the freeway and the occasional burglary and whatnot that we've dealt with as well. So that gives you just kind of an idea of just the last year. And we can also statistics wise with the contract that we have written up that looks like we'll be moving forward with here. Has in it anytime you guys would need statistics, would like, any information. I mean, outside of giving personal information that we can't do, you could request anything we could give you, what we responded to within the last 6 months, within the last week, within the last year, and be able to provide all that to you. So as far as the contract, Mayor, do you want me to go over that part of it or just what was in the statistics?
Does anyone have any questions on the contract, or do you want me to have them go over it?
The only question I have is that you say we built it into the budget some time ago.
Well, just this tentative budget has about 15,000 built into the,
Okay, because I was looking at what we did on our one budget and I don't see any 15,000.
Because the contract is set to start at the beginning of our fiscal year,
it's not the.
July 1st.
Yeah, it's not in this year's, it'll be July 1. So there we have it built into the tentative budget. So do you have anything you want to point out in here that's that we should pay attention to? Or?
As far as the contract's concerned, it typically with the sheriff's office, we don't deal with the city ordinances per se. And you guys have been able to get in place a prosecutor, deal with court, being able to give us that ability. With this contract, it allows us to be able to do that. There will be some selectivity in that. We don't want to get into being the weed police, for lack of a better term.
Sure.
But like he was saying, the red tag thing, something that would be more of we need an immediate action, something a little bit more than just a paper, and that in and of itself too. We also would offer that if there's a paper that needs to be served to somebody that a deputy sheriff standing there with a paper is more. I don't know what the right word is.
Gravitas.
Yeah, there you go. That would get some attention there. We would be happy to do that. And then, like I said, if we need to come up and do that, we will. For the other things that wouldn't necessarily reach that level, you still have the option of going to the prosecutor with those things as well. So it just gives us a little bit more as far as options are concerned to be able to help with the things that we haven't been able to in the past.
So I'll explain it in a different way. When we have a issue with code enforcement, our first plan of attack would be to probably have a conversation or send out a letter to somebody when it's not a critical issue. And we, can point out that there's, for example, let's say we have barking dogs, we could talk to the neighbor, but we could also just send out a letter, let them know that this is a problem, we have to take care of it. And the second time that we have the complaint problem, we might type up that same letter, second notice, and we ask the sheriff to deliver it. Gives us a little bit more. So rather than having them be the first line, we'd like them to be the second and third line. So that helps help manage our budget a little bit. And in some cases, these problems sometimes, there's times you want to just call the SWAT team out to take care of the problem, but that's not an option for the most part. We have to diplomatically go about it, and it can take weeks and even months in the case of going with Rachel to prosecute something. It takes quite a bit of time, and so patience in some cases is needed. And so I just don't want to call them out on every time somebody blows their nose and we're calling sheriff. I don't want to do that. So let's be respectful of that. But for the most part, we appreciate what you guys do, and we appreciate that you're here to help us beef up our enforcement a little bit. So.
Absolutely. With the contract as well, it does designate a certain amount of hours per year and per week that would be on average patrol. This would give you additional patrolling for areas that it was needed, whether it's out on the highway or in town. Just requests like that would be, so the deputy will actually be here for a certain amount of time to do that.
Who takes jurisdictional position of 59? It's a state highway, so does the state do it, or do you?
Yes, it's kind of a shared thing. So UHP technically is the primary on that road. So if we have a major accident, they would be the first ones to come up and do it. But we will always respond to that. And usually, because there's more of us and we're already in the area, we're there first.
So then you just handle it, basically?
Yes, so there are times that they will come up if they're on and they'll handle it and we'll assist. But if they don't have anybody on or not anybody in the area, we have an agreement that we'll help out with them, yeah.
Also, I was wondering if a lot of police departments have a website where they can go and make traffic complaints, like speed complaint and in a designated area. Do you have that?
Yes, so there's actually two places. With this COVID-19 thing, we just got online an ability for somebody to make a full complaint without having a deputy respond to their house. They can make a full complaint. We can do that report in office over the phone type thing. And then just if they don't want to go to that length of filling out an entire report, there is on the website as well a place where they can just say, hey, we've got a lot of speeders in in this area. In
so basically, we can let Apple Valley know, maybe in one of our billing statements, that if you have a problem in your neighborhood or you lost speeding cars, you can go ahead and make a complaint to,
Absolutely.
since we're not contracting, and they can put a little more, focus your attention a little more in that area.
Yeah, and so that email comes to the administration, and
Right.
then I'm over the uniform patrol. So if
Sure.
the deputies who are in the cars can respond to your calls, I'm over that entire division. And so it comes to me, and then I get it out into an email. We also have specific area cars, east side cars, but then some that we've just newly created over the last couple of years, which are called target enforcement cars, and they work hand in hand with our canines. And what their job is, they're not on the hook necessarily for responding to calls all day long. They are specifically when we have a need like that, we
Sure.
say, hey, we need you up in Apple Valley because we have this
So they're
problem.
kind of floaters, basically. Okay, super.
Quick question.
Yes.
Speaking of canines,
Uh-huh.
we had a problem recently in Cedar Point with dogs loose biting.
Mhm.
So with that, I guess the residents would call you first, how would it go? And
If they're biting, I would imagine you want to.
Yeah, so if we have a dog bite is by state law. The hospital, if they get a dog bite, they are required to report it to us, and we do need to get that kind of report. If it's a dog, a large type thing, then at that point you do have the, like, and he's like,
Or barking.
or barking, yeah. As he said, if you have kind of that checklist, and we'll try to do it, in-house first, deal with it from the city, and then we're not getting the response. At that point, we can jump in, absolutely. But if it is a dog bite, then you're absolutely right. We need to get that.
How many sworn do you have? Sworn personnel?
Oh, could we have the jail? We have
So just patrol, I mean,
just
law
patrol,
enforcement.
law enforcement in general. Oh, so we've got detectives. We have about, I want to say it's 45, 46.
So you're stretched pretty thin in a big county like this.
We've got a big county, and yeah, so anywhere from 3 to 5 deputies on per shift. But
Sure.
then, like I said, we do have those additional ones that we've just created to try to help out with that.
All right.
So one thing that I was surprised with is the total number of responses in the last 12 months and the number of citations. So the question that I had is how much does this contract increase the level of service? Because there's obviously already an established level of
Sure.
service. You're responding a certain amount already.
Yeah, so because you fall into the county area without your own agency, that is our obligation to cover that. So if you have a call and we have deputies in the area, just at their own discretion, they're still going to do your enforcement without the contract. The contract actually does bump up the time that the deputies are spending here, more of that obligation, so to speak. And then it also gives us that ability to kind of stretch out what we normally wouldn't do and help with those more civil type. I actually won't even say civil because they are criminal nature with their city codes, but we typically wouldn't do that. So I do think that you might see an increase in some of those traffic things just because you're going to have deputies spending more time. But those more minor things that we wouldn't have normally dealt with, the contract will give us that ability.
Okay, this above and beyond the normal patrols and that we have out here now?
Yes.
So basically, so you told us, we have the little sheet of the responses within the last year. So could we get a report like quarterly or what you responded to? Obviously, you can't go into details, but what you
Yeah.
responded to in Apple Valley in the last whatever.
Sure.
What's common, what the communities generally want you to report
So,
on? Once a month, once every quarter? Or?
it just depends on the town, but generally there is a point of contact, and I'm the point of contact for the
Right.
sheriff's office. So what usually happens is I will get an email from, whoever that point of contact is, whether it's a city council member or the city manager, whoever it is. And they just say, hey, can we get you to report for such and such a time?
Okay,
I don't know that we have anybody that's on a normal rotation where they're just getting it constantly, but if they do have a meeting coming up or somebody's complaining,
okay,
there's something like that, we really kind of try to make this a la carte for whatever works for you.
okay.
And it would be similar to this report, right?
Yes. Yeah, we would redact names and addresses, but other than that, we could give you what we're handling.
Cool.
All right. Any other questions on the?
If we need to get a hold of you, how do we get, do you have a card or something? How do we get
Yes,
a
in
hold of
fact, I can go grab some cards
Okay,
for you.
appreciate it.
Yeah, we'll give you, and then the email is probably, if you need something quick, obviously through dispatch to get somebody that's on duty. But if you're looking for more of an administrative thing, an email is, I'm connected to my phone constantly, so it'll come through to that and I can respond very quickly.
Mayor, this is Sean. I have one question or just clarification.
Sure.
And that is on number 4, it says that they'll provide weekly reports of activity in Apple Valley. And then they can come to meetings when you request them to come. So I guess I just wanted to clarify the last question on the type of report. And my question is this report that you provided today similar to what would be provided in those weekly reports?
Yes, yeah, and again, we can do things a la carte, really, what you guys are interested in, we can provide that as long as it's not crossing over into that grandma area. Yeah, if you want it weekly, like the contract says, we can do that. If that's too much and you guys want to do it as a request or monthly, we really can make an adjustment however you need.
So Mayor, if I could make a suggestion as one that gets a lot of reports from my police department, you probably would just tell them, even though it says here weekly, a monthly report would work. And I'm sure that Deputy Bentley would, if there was something unusual or, in nature or a high priority type of thing, that they would give you a special report during the month and say, we had this type of, a discharge of a firearm or something of that nature, because, I don't know if you actually need a weekly report or not, but.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
So I'll just slash through this and we'll say monthly and we'll just have them edit that. They're actually going to, on this, Sean, they take it before the county and have them sign off on it, and then we'll sign it off again. So we can make that change on this.
Perfect. And I'll let Chief Brooksby know as well.
Yeah, I think weekly's wasted their time. And monthly is more than enough. So
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks for your feedback, Sean. All right, if there's no more questions, we'll someone want to do a motion to approve this amendment agreement.
I move we approve the memorandum of understanding between Washington County Sheriff's Office and the town of Apple Valley.
Second.
And vote.
Aye.
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 And motion carries. And thank you for your time. I appreciate you coming out to explain.
Meet
this.
you.
Appreciate you too. Thank you.
All right, so item number 2 and 3 kind of go hand in hand. So if you guys are okay, I'd like to really address both of them. It probably could have been under one, but what started this was Mike McLaughlin, when we were going to pass off this ordinance that was approved by the Planning Commission for the change in the animal ordinance to the RE zone. It was noted by him that the RE zone had in there very sketchy information about dogs and cats. And so I took it to task. I've spent tons of hours researching and looking up other communities and kind of what I came back to. I went to our code and I don't know if you guys have done a word search at all on your own for dogs in our code. When I did the word search, it came back 0. And so I proceeded to figure out that we really need to do something. And I'd like to kind of go over a lot of things that we could consider doing. And when I decided on something that I liked and kind of had it polished out a little bit on what I liked as well on it, decided that it didn't even belong under RE at all. Because the municipal code is different from land use code. In the RE, that has the ability to have horses. SF and PD and all these other different designations don't have that ability. And so horses belong in RE because that's where you can have them. Now, when you go to dogs can be in all those different codes, and that's why it should be under a municipal code where this is under all, it would be, in other words, town-wide with the any animal restrictions that we decided that are in place. And so what happened was, is I'm getting all this all written up, and then I thought, well, I gotta figure out where I'm gonna put it in the municipal code. And when I started figuring out in our code where it should be, I discovered that there is an animal section after all. It just didn't have the word dog in it. And that's why the dog failed on the search. And what we've done is we've adopted this ordinance that I've included in our packet today, and this is the county ordinance. And so there's a reference to that. And by the way, I've taken care of it, put some search tags in reference to our online stuff. So if you do a dog search today, it does show up. And there's links there, and you click on the link and it takes you right to this code, which is really the county ordinance. And so this is what we currently have on file. And a couple things that I discovered when I was going through a lot of different code is I was surprised at how many communities did nothing regarding the number of dogs or cats that anybody can have. Instead, they put in there some of the catchphrases that have to do with enforcement and nuisance. And I think some of the words they had used would be regarding barking and just noise. And it would be, they'd use catchphrases like ongoing and in a timely fashion, things like that. In other words, some of the verbiage that we have in ours is what is in these other codes as well. And so I thought a lot about this, and if we go in there and just say that you can't have more than 2 dogs, for example, that doesn't fix the problem. If the problem is noise, that's already built into our code. And if you tell someone they can't have 4 or 5 dogs, it still doesn't fix the problem. It's about noise. And if noise is the problem, that's what needs to be in the ordinance as opposed to number of dogs. And that's in our code right now. And so what I recommend on this RE ordinance is to just remove that line item, which is
Number 4?
yeah, number 4, and we'll just remove that altogether because it's handled already in our municipal code where we have a noise ordinance. So I think, and the other thing that comes into play here that I had scratched out and somehow I noticed that it's still in here is on the page 4, item B. It says no building, structure, pen, corral, coop, or kennel housing animals or fowl can be constructed closer than 50 feet to a dwelling on the adjacent lot or 30 feet from the property line. And I'd like to just scratch kennel in that because if you're talking about someone who has dogs that wants them on their back porch where there's shade cover or cement that they can be on, then it's probably a more healthy and sanitary place to have a dog than out in the middle of the backyard where, you know, and I just think it could be up to an option of a homeowner. But when it comes to things like chicken coops that, you know, have odor problems and other health issues, that it becomes maybe a bigger thing. You don't want, well, my wife would want the horses right by the back window of the dining room. That would be okay with her, but you know, there's obvious reasons why having them at least 30 feet away or 50 feet away probably makes sense. But anyway, any feedback on that? Paul, Debbie, Denny?
I just think we have to enforce it. They're not supposed to have, if we're gonna leave the footage in the wording, not having them, the kennels attached right up to the house.
And that offends you in what way? Kennels up to the house.
Because that's what our code says.
That's why I was trying to recommend that we change that. And the reason is because how does having a dog in your back patio a huge hazard?
Well, because sometimes if they're up against the house, people are gonna think that that's okay and leave the animals in the kennels out in all sorts of weather. And if they're not shaded or protected, what's good is a kennel? That's my feeling.
Denny?
Yeah, I don't
What are your thoughts?
Well, I was thinking, you know, you need to protect the animals and let it out, but have them right next to the house, but that's up to you.
Well, if it's just dogs, you know, I
Yeah,
agree
I know.
about the horses
The
and
dogs, but the dogs
chickens and all that.
too. My poor guy, he had a dog house. It was close to the house, but he had a dog house and he was fine. Everybody treats their animals differently, their dogs that differently, so.
Yeah. In a way, I'm just thinking that, I don't know what a complete description of kennel is. I know on our house, we have a fenced area that's probably only 30 feet, maybe 40 feet deep. And it's allows them to stay in the backyard. And part of that is the back patio and everything else that goes with it. And in a way, the verbiage here would say that I can't do that. But I've got to create an area 30 feet away from the house instead of having them in the backyard by the house.
If she heard that, a lot of people have indoor dogs, a lot of people don't. And the ones that are indoors, I don't think makes any difference.
Well, today we locked them out.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so we put the dog door in and they're locked
Right.
outside. But,
If they're locked outside.
and that's how I interpret this, is this would mean that we can't even lock them outside in the backyard, which is a fenced in area that you could probably call that a kennel area.
I don't think that's right. I mean,
But, Paul,
I really don't have an opinion on it. I think that, I mean, my neighbor across the street has I don't know how many dogs he's got in his yard across the street. He's got it covered, it's covered, shaded. They used to bark a lot, not so much anymore. So, and it works out fine, I think.
Right, that's the difference. It's covered and shaded, the animals, not just a cage out there, but, and your kennel is different. It's not really like a kennel.
and his is another example because it's really the side yard right against the house. That's the 30 feet I'm trying to get rid of. But in his case, he has a fenced area that is the dog run, there's grass out there. It has shade trees and it's right against the house. And it's also has a fence that's solid, so you can't see through it. Anyway, what's my recommendation? We just scratch the word kennel, everything else stays in.
I think what you're wanting to do, if I understood correctly, is scratch the last line as well.
Which one?
Because the first phrasing regarding the distance to the dwelling is related to the distance of the dwelling on an adjacent lot. But then the second line, the last sentence there is referencing the main dwelling. So are you saying that, are you wanting to modify the distance to a dwelling on an adjacent lot? So saying that it can be closer than 30 feet to your neighbor's house?
I was trying to remove kennels that someone that has them in their backyard and on their back patio. It just seems ridiculous that they can't have that. But I wasn't trying to suggest that they could put it right next to their neighbor's house. I don't think that's right either, because what we're trying to do is encourage them to put them in the backyard behind the house that where they can't see the traffic, they can't, you know, they're not barking at the people walking by and those issues.
Mayor,
Yes.
this is Sean. Okay, so typically when there's a reference in a city ordinance to a kennel, it is a commercial type of operation. And that's what we have in St. George's reference, most of the cities that I know, there's a difference between a kennel and a dog run. People will have a dog run area for their animals that they're allowed. For example, in St. George, you can only have 2 or less or fewer, whatever. But you can only have up to 2, right? And so you can have a dog run there. We don't call it a kennel. And then our definitions, a kennel is 3 or more for purposes of breeding and those things. That's typically what the kennel reference is for. and that's why they have more restrictions on them. So I think that you would want to you want to distinguish between what you guys are talking about, which is typically just a dog run for one of those animals that you are legally able to have, versus a kennel, which is a breeding operation or a boarding situation.
Right, so if I put a, say a 5x6 pen up to hold 1 or 2 dogs, is that a kennel, or is that just a dog run?
So our code does define kennel as the land or building used for the keeping of 5 or more dogs, at least 6 months old, and 8 cats, 8 or more cats.
Okay, so it doesn't matter, I can say that.
So that sounds like more of a boarding or breeding operation because it's allowing that many animals. And so I think that whole thing needs to be clarified on what you want to have. And as far as the dog run goes and the size of it, actually you could make it as big as your backyard, right? I mean, your whole backyard could be a dog run because you allow your 2 dogs to run around in it. So I think we need to distinguish that kennel as a type of breeding or boarding operation versus.
All right, like that's defined already, so I'll leave that alone. And are you guys okay with this then, if we drop off item number 4? Any discussion on that?
Is the part in number 4 where it says pets are expected to be fenced, leash sheltered from weather and trained, not to be a noise nuisance, is that like defined in the other?
Yeah, there's information on, it actually goes into greater detail on a lot of different things. Number 1, it's, see, the difference is on item number 4, it really doesn't belong in RE because you want the same thing in SF, you want the same thing in PD, you want the same thing in agriculture, and that's why it really belongs out of here. And then the next part of our discussion is do we want to completely change this other ordinance? We don't have to adopt the counties. We can adopt our own that goes into greater detail. And there's a couple things I'll just, while we're thinking about the ordinance it's before us right now, we're kind of doing both at the same time. One of the things that I found is when we're digging in there, you can have a limit of 1 or 2 to 3 dogs, and then past that you can have say a hobby kennel license that we could offer, and that hobby kennel license could even be tied to, for example, where you have someone applying for that, and it'd be kind of like a zone change, where we take that house, that address, and we go out 500 feet and send those people a letter, ask them if they're okay with a hobby kennel license at this address. Now, if they're already complaining about dog noises and different things at that address, of course, then we would want that feedback from them, and then we just deny the license. But what that does isn't about denying someone a license, it's making them responsible, but they understand that in order to have the dogs, they have to adhere to a tighter standard and make the neighbors happy, so to speak. And I wonder if that would not benefit in some way. Now, if one neighbor wants to be mean to another neighbor, they can say no for whatever reason. But if we have, 5, 6 people saying, yeah, I don't have any problem with their dogs, they take good care of them. And one outlier says that, no, it could be that is something that we consider in that process and approve anyway. But anyway, this is just another way that we can look at this if we want to. And then there's a couple different levels of licensing or kennels that we could also define that will allow us to have, the advantage of having a different licensing is that you could tie different levels of care required. For example, if it's someone that's has a lot of barking dogs, they've got to have a building and structure to help confine the noise that's climate controlled and cleaned, and we can build into that inspection requirements, things like that. And at any point we have complaints come in, And let's say someone has, 10 dogs and a hobby license, and we have a bunch of complaints coming in because of noise and so forth. We have that ability to go out and do our own inspection and then revoke the license and their ability to have that many dogs because they're not adhering to it. Of course, we give them some time probably to cure the problem, things like that, but so that'd be one of the advantages if we are trying to micromanage this, but basically these rules already micromanage it, and to a point of if we have someone that has barking problems or, we have the power right now to do something about it, and whether it's involving Rachel and that type of action if we had to. And anyway, if you read into this article, it also talks about our ability to even impound the animals or cause the problem and so forth as well. So anyway, what level are you guys thinking that we need to consider this? Is the noise enough? Do we want to go deeper on it? How are you guys feeling?
I would imagine that when sheriff's office does respond to noise complaints, it's probably mostly barking, wouldn't you think?
That's my thought. And
Barking
it's-
dogs.
And that
Because mostly it's a noise issue. I mean, it's not a smell issue generally speaking. We're all on 1 acre parcel mostly. And
my thinking on this, as far as the number of dogs and the kennel licensing and all that, is that it doesn't matter. It could be one dog and you could have a barking problem. And it could be 8 dogs and you have a barking problem. And it's not, the difference isn't necessarily the number of dogs, it's whether or not the owner has put into place the ability to house the animals and manage the noise. And so forth.
Being respectful of the neighbors.
Right. And if they're not being respectful of neighbors, we still have the ordinances already in place to handle the noise. And we just need to have that method of saying that, you know what, this is your last warning, and we're gonna have to impound the dogs if we can't fix the problem, if some neighbor is still having a problem. So, and limiting the number and creating all these licenses, I think that that's something we consider doing someday, but I just think what we have is probably fixing the problem already with noise. It addresses that you have to license them. It addresses trespass. If the dog is going pooping on the neighbor's yard, all that's addressed in this ordinance that we already have in place. It's just the difference is, to be honest with you, I didn't even know we had one because I couldn't find it.
Is there a way we could take these and go like this?
Well, that's the back to the ordinance right now, the rural estates, remember, is just rural estates. It's that one ordinance where it says that here's what you can do in rural estates, of which means you can have horses. Well, any place in Apple Valley, you can already have dogs. And that's why this one is already in our municipal code anyway. So they're already mixed in because they're already part of our code.
so you're just saying, if we pass this is removing 4. from it.
That's right. And it doesn't diminish what we already have passed. And it cleans it up because you don't want to have one rule for RE and a different rule for SF and everything else. It makes it harder to figure out what the rules are. So it's better just remove it all together, in my view, because we already have this other one in place. So anyway, that's what I recommend that we do is, you guys are okay with that?
Yeah.
This has been passed off a few weeks ago by the Plan Commission. I think we've done all these other changes.
Okay. Ready for motion then?
Yes, anytime anyone wants to, and she have any more comments on it.
So Mayor, this will be the one and no,
Well, this is already ours.
okay.
We don't have to do anything. I just want to show you what we currently have. That way you knew that we currently had something.
I like this too because it has a part about the animals, can't be running loose because of the situation we
Right.
have going in Cedar Point right now.
And this is easy. We chose this route because then when you're calling the sheriff, they know it's the county rule. They already know it and where it is. So that way we didn't have to reinvent the wheel on enforcement of it. They already know what the rule is. So that's just straight out of their book is what this is. And it's adopted in our book. If you, now today, if you do a search in our website for dogs, these three, I did A, B, and C is what we've passed off and accepted is already our rule for this right here. So any other questions on the ordinance as they've passed this off to us?
Well, if anybody had any questions on that, could you in the ordinance refer to Article A if there's any questions, so they know what we're talking about totally. We do, but not everybody does.
I'm not sure I understand what you're
Okay,
asking me.
so if we're gonna vote on this, try to get it,
This is RE, yeah.
this is already in.
And this is in our municipal code.
So
This
if
is
anybody
in-
comes up and says, okay, they read this and say, well, what's it tell me about the animal? Why can't we just reference, say, go to Article A and read it? And it's on the website, right?
Right, if they put in if they type in the keyword dog is what Marty's saying.
It's gonna say,
it'll
it's gonna
come-
show
it'll
all of
come
this.
up.
Yeah, in our municipal code, it's in there, not in RE, but it's also not in SF, it's not in PD, it's not in agriculture, it's not in these other ones anyway. For some reason, it's in this RE, and that's the only place it is, other than in municipal code. So the dog ordinance is there. If anybody does a search in municipal code, they're gonna find this now. And if we ever have usually this comes up in an enforcement action anyway. So we end up having a complaint about a dog barking, and we search in the municipal code, this comes up.
What I'm saying,
and we
though,
send it to them.
if somebody goes in and they look up an ordinance 2020-06, there's a reference Article A.
It could, we could,
Wouldn't that be beneficial for the people looking that up? Because it kind of, if you read the whole thing.
it gives you more than one place to put it, is what we're saying.
And they say, oh, well, okay, now I understand what they're talking about. Because if you read it, maybe I'm not seeing something, but
Essentially, you're looking for a cross-reference.
Yeah, that's
within
All right,
the
so
language,
number 4, why don't we do this? Let's add in there traditional household pets, dogs and cats. And then we reference this particular code where we adopted. It wouldn't be the 5-3-A-1. There is actually an animal ordinance in the municipal code. And so if we reference it there, it will give you one extra place to
Right.
click on it and find it.
I think it'd be easier for most people.
Can you find that? Is that clear enough for you, Ben, on
Yeah. Maybe
traditional
Sean,
household
maybe
pets?
Sean could chime in there. I don't know how much cross-referencing is, I don't know if that's ideal within code. That's not.
So I think, Ben, in answer to that question, this is Sean for the record. The reference probably would be good so that when someone's looking at the other animals, they would also know that that there's a separate dog ordinance. And the dogs that you're allowed to have on your property would not be assigned points, right? I mean, the point system is for all those other animals that
Right.
are. Okay. Yeah, I think that would be good just to have a short reference to that, and also mention that the dogs are not assigned points, so it's clear.
Okay. All right, so someone can put that in a motion.
Do you want 2 and 3 together, or do you want them done separately?
Two's not an action.
It's just it's actually for item number 3, rural estates. The first one was just discussion.
I make a motion that we approve the amendments to 10-10-050 rural estate zone, ordinance 0-2020-06, recommended by planning commission, based on to include the reference to the county
Current municipal code.
municipal code
Or, yeah,
into our zone.
I'll second that.
And vote.
Aye.
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 All right. And for now, what I'm gathering from everybody, just to finish the discussion part of item number 2, is we'll work within the bounds of that for right now. And if you guys decide you want to look at the kennel option that I mentioned, hobby kennel and all that stuff, you know, in a future date, then, you know, ask me. I've already got a lot of homework done on it, so we can do that if you decide to. But for right now, we'll just stay with what we have. And then next item on our agenda is discussion possible action on amendment 10.10.30 commercial zones ordinance 02020-11. Planning Commission recommended 5-0. And basically what they did is they went into, we can turn to page 3. Is, well, it's actually, let's go page 2. So at the bottom of page 2, we created item number 4, which is tourist commercial zone. All this underlying stuff is new text. And the tourist commercial zone, the goal there is to separate out what's tourist commercial and what is C2 commercial, and make it so we can place tourist commercial where we want the tourist to be, compared to, you know, having a campground right next to a residential neighborhood, that kind of thing. And so if you read through that, it kind of gives you a description of it. And one of the items in there, I'll point out a couple of things. It says the TC zone shall not be located within 1,500 feet of the existing residential zone. Now that's, I want to clarify something. What this says, it just says that if there's a residential zone that's within 1,500 feet, that tourist commercial can't go there. Now, if that tourist commercial is 1,500 feet from a residential zone, and a developer decides to come in after this zone is placed and build within that 1,500 feet, that would be probably acceptable because the tourist commercial was there first. The campground, the hotel, whatever's there, and then they're encroaching in that 1,500 feet. That would be their option, but it wouldn't be the option to have the tourist commercial go in if the residential is there first. That's how I read it anyway. Then we've added another column in the table on page 3. We had C1, C2, C3 here before, and we've added another column, which is the TC zone. And then we've gone down this list, looking at what are permitted items, what do we consider tourist commercial, and our main focus here was to take, things like campgrounds or hotels, things like that are a little more significant and block them out of normal C2 zoning and require that to be in a tourist commercial zoning. And I think our goal is to try to target 59 and Main Street in that area as tourist commercial and steer away from, tourist commercial right next to our residential neighborhoods. And so if you can go through these items down here, exceptions to that are things like a bed and breakfast. It's kind of normal that those will be in neighborhoods or in other areas. But anyway, take a look at the permitted and not permitted items in there. You go down to cabins, for example, they're not permitted unless they're in tourist commercial. Campgrounds, not allowed unless they're in tourist commercial.
What was the one you were questioning before, Paul?
Oh, I was just curious. There's one where it says a delicatessen definitely isn't allowed, but a fruit store is.
Does it say that?
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
Yeah, of course a deli would be permitted in that. It's that's kind of crazy. Is it all right if I change that?
You bet. You
Page
should.
5.
So it's probably just something they missed, and that's why we're looking over this one more time. If you see something that you don't agree with, it's,
Mayor, this is Sean. I see that arcade is listed twice. I'm wondering if one of them was supposed to be a strike through.
One says permitted and one says no.
that's interesting, yeah.
It is.
Yeah, it's,
And then another thought that one of the many goals that the town should have when redoing this ordinance, which the entire ordinance actually, you have like book binding and bookstores, things like that. We did too. We had billiard rooms and things. And really what we did for today's economy is just pare them down to different types of businesses. And that goes to the point about the delicatessen versus the food is that, you could really just have a general category of restaurants that includes all of those, a general category of food stores that includes, that's what we tried to do in our new ordinance, was just take out those old references for places that we really don't have dance halls anymore and things like that. And so they've just been in ordinances for years and years. And a bookbinder, I don't know that you're going to have very many come to town. So
I'm surprised they don't have a video store down here still.
Yeah, like barbershop and beauty shop, couldn't that be combined into?
Well, I don't, some of us don't need a barber shop, so.
Okay, dude.
So maybe we should just take a look at that, see if we can consolidate a little bit. It is,
Well,
it is an awful long list.
Yeah, my suggestion is something to do in the future and look at the entire code. But some of those things that were pointed out right now are true. It's sometimes it doesn't make sense to allow one and not the other, but do the best you can with what you have right now. And then in the future, we can collapse those into retail, food, restaurants, that type of thing.
Well, I really like the goal of this whole thing though, is to centralize places where tourists are gonna want to go and not disturb the rest of the town.
We don't have to say yes to this today. This is something we can just work on for our next meeting if you want to table it. And then I could try to condense this down a little bit and just pare it down and send by email if you want to.
Mayor, if I might make a suggestion.
Yeah.
And that is, I think the goal is good. And like I said, in order to collapse them, you're going to look at the entire ordinance. So maybe you do want to adopt it tonight with what you have suggested, and maybe make some changes if you want to add a few things on there. And then what we do is look at the entire zoning ordinance and the references to businesses and just do it overall for the entire ordinance.
I just don't know why a needlework, embroidery, and knitting store couldn't be under tourist commercial. I would think that would belong right there, wouldn't you guys?
Yes. Well, I like Sean's suggestion. I mean, this is a lot of work. Just collapse. You're right, Sean, just collapsing all this isn't going to do it.
Well, I want to point out one other possibility, and it's that someone comes to us, for example, and they decide they want to put in, let me find something here real fast, a newsstand. I mean, those are happening nowadays. But they want to put their newsstand in a tourist commercial area. I mean, they have the ability to come to the planning commission, say, I think it should be tourist related, and this is why. And they have the power to go ahead and change that in a meeting. And so it's not like this is a forever thing. This is a living document that we can always change in the future when someone comes and, like I got a call from a guy that wants to put a winery out on Main Street. And so I added that in here as well, that a winery is probably appropriate in that kind of a location for tourist commercial.
And one question on that though, you got the bar, pub and tavern, no, you got a winery, and every winery I've been to has tasting rooms, so you're gonna be drinking.
Yeah, so what's the name of that one? Tavern, is it, or?
The bar, pub and tavern,
Bar.
and it's on page 4, halfway down.
All right.
You got, no, but you do have a winery now.
Yeah, let's add that.
I think we should
Bar
let them
pack.
open a winery so I can open a bar.
Oh, it says right here it's permitted.
It's permitted.
Mine, it says, no.
Oh, no, it's permitted. Bar
Well,
pub
it's,
cover.
see, it's under.
Bed and breakfast is, but not a
Well,
bar.
that's under a C1 area though. And so that's C2, C3 and
Okay, that's
TC.
real way over it. Okay, but see, you look here, the wineries under C1. So that's okay.
Yeah, it could be, that should be a no there, but, a C1 zone.
There's a commercial winery that really cranks it out there or something. I don't know.
I think I kind of agree with Sean. We need to take these and review them and then condense what we can and then come back and go over them again.
Well, he was suggesting
Pass it
pass
tonight.
it because we have so many other things we'd have to change.
I think it'd be good to pass tonight because there is a little bit of pressure to get, you know,
The tourists,
the tourists and also people want to put bed and breakfast, they want to put all this stuff.
All right, well, I'm gonna suggest on the arcade that we scratch the first one off of there. And we stay with the second one because it's underlined. I think that first one was supposed to be deleted. Our software has some limits and I think some of those got added. That was supposed to have been scratched off on the other one. The one that's underlined is the new one. And then
You talk about
the
page 3.
bar and
scratch the arcade.
tavern is just means you can't have it in the C1 zone. And most of this other stuff I've gone through many times. I think we're in pretty good shape. But like I say, if it's anyone that comes in can ask us to change something in the future. And then the planning commission can decide if that fits the vision at the time, so. Any other comments on it? Are you guys okay to go ahead and pass this for now? Or would you prefer to work on it?
I don't have a problem passing it.
I think we need to get the tourist zone set up, that way we don't run into any issues.
You're saying time is of the essence.
I think so, establish the zone.
I'm not hearing your words very good. Are you saying?
Time is of the essence, I think.
To establish the
Yes,
zone.
Okay,
yes,
so let's
on
get a
the
motion and let's take a vote now.
I make a motion that I move to make a motion, we adopt ordinance number 0-2020-11, an ordinance creating the tourist commercial zone.
And with the changes as we've
With the
discussed.
changes as discussed to what things are limited in certain zones.
And second,
No second.
and vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, carries. And the other general map designations, number 6, 2020-07.
Number 5 was the general plan. I don't know if that was intentional to.
So that seems like we're missing something here.
So 2020-08, number 6 on the, number 5 on the agenda is the next item on the agenda.
This definition.
Okay. All right, so the table that is on 2020-08, that item goes with the one we just passed where it gives you, well, it does two things. We've been talking about low density, medium density, high density for a long time. It also creates the tourist commercial and gives you a kind of brief description of it. And this was passed by the planning commission 5-0 is what it should say. It says 5-0, 5-5. Anyway, so this is the ordinance. I think we've already looked at this last time, but we didn't have the ordinance in place is what this is. So we already talked about this and voted on it, I think, but we did not have the ordinance. This is,
So this is the rubber
This is
stamp,
the-
basically what we already did?
yeah, this is basically finishing up the job we have. So.
Yeah, I move we,
Any questions from
I
anybody?
don't think so. We already talked about it.
Sorry?
I think we've already talked about it, haven't we?
Yeah, we've already,
Like forever?
I think we already voted on this too. We just didn't have the actual ordinance done last time.
Right.
So are you guys okay to vote on the ordinance?
You bet.
All right, so how about a motion on that? Debbie, I think this should be yours.
I'll take it. I move to pass Town of Apple Valley ordinance 0-2020-08, an ordinance changing the general plan map designation and definition.
Second.
Vote.
Aye.
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 I keep waiting for Mike to say aye, that's.
And then, the next one is, along the same line was the designation of the area in Bubbling Wells. Designating that as a low density. And that's something we've already talked about. This is if the ordinance for we've already approved. So, any questions on that one?
Nope.
And so Debbie, it's yours again, sorry,
Okay, that's okay.
because this is
I move
your
to
baby.
accept ordinance number 0-2020-07, an ordinance changing the general plan map designation for the Bubbling Wells area.
Second.
And vote.
Aye.
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 Motion carries. And got that one done. And the last one on our list is discussion and possible action on amendments of 10-28-230 accessory buildings and accessory uses general requirements. Ordinance 2020-10. So this is the actual ordinance for the shipping containers. Let me explain where we're at on this thing. This thing's been being kicked around endlessly as well. And what we have done on this, if you look at the number on this, on the amendment, it says 10-28-23. Planning Commission came up with verbiage they're happy with on this. And in the process, they had a public hearing under 10-28-23. And then someplace in the process of polishing up that language, they decided to put a 5 after that 2-3. So it was 10-28-235. We didn't have a public hearing for that. And so we've got to have a public hearing again, or in this case, what I'm recommending is let's just put this right back where it belongs, which is under the accessory building ordinance. And we're going to just add that to 10-28-230. That's what we had a public hearing on. We've already had a public hearing on this issue. Any questions?
So it'll be exactly as this, but just under 10-28-230.
This is just the changes under that. This is not the whole ordinance. Is that right, Ben? Or do we have the whole ordinance here?
No, this is the entire section of,
You got it under J somehow.
I incorporated it in, so this is how it will read once adopted.
All right, so the old ordinance had, letter J was just a reference to the shipping containers. And now we've taken the modified language and put it under J is what we've done, that the planning commission's recommended. And so this is basically, cleans it up. We've already had a public hearing on the 10-2.28.230. Any questions on this? Everybody okay with the language on it? Any questions, Debbie?
I'm just looking for half acre. Does it say anything on here about
It's under 2A.
lots under 2 acres, not to exceed?
So that means half of 1 acre lots only allowed 120 footer is what it says.
And if we accept this and pass this, the offenders that are out there on half acre lots, will they still be able to be addressed?
They're grandfathered in. This prevents 40 footers from coming in to the 1 acre areas in the future.
But we can still make it, because we can't make them adhere to what they're supposed to look like or anything?
I think that we can, as far as painting goes, I think that all of them have to be painted. We can make a reasonable argument that based on the old ordinance, that at least that they had to have been painted. But we can make them, get a building permit, but that's pretty easy. They pay $150 now they're legal. So to get rid of them, I don't know that that's an option. Do you want to speak to that, Sean?
Yeah, Sean Guzman, I apologize, I'm trying to unmute here. If they were legal prior to this on a property, then they continue to be a legal and they're just a non-conforming use, a legal non-conforming use. But if they weren't legal before, or they weren't in compliance before, they still have to meet the standards that were established before. So if you required painting, they'd have to do that, even if they're legal where they are. But if they're not legal, if they weren't legal under your current ordinance, then you could still have them remove them under this ordinance. So I don't know if that answers the question or not.
Yes, it does.
Yes.
Yeah, appreciate it. This definition was changed, by the way. I think they allowed 40 footers on the smaller ones, and I felt like that was too much, and I changed it to. They also said on 1 acre or less, and I put it at less than 2 acres, and that's because someone with 1.10, a tenth of a acre bigger than 1 would be allowed to have a 40 footer. So that's one of the changes I made, is to reduce that down. So you could only have a 20 foot on the smaller lots. So I just think they take over the lot when you have 40 feet and down on. So are you guys okay with the language on this, or do you need another meeting to have a chance to review it?
Debbie had a question, what they look like.
Well, in F, I
You look
didn't
at
see
number
it,
4 down there, Debbie, it does.
and F, it does say that they have to match
Yeah.
materials and colors with architectural styles, designs, blend with them.
Within 1 month.
And we worded it this way because if Paul wants to get one and then paint it the same color as his house with red trim, he'll be okay to do that. So, and that's kind of what this does, is it gives someone the latitude to do that if they want. But if you look at Paul's house and you saw that next to it, it would look totally in place. It would look appropriate. So, and that's, you got to keep in mind, that's why we worded it that way, because somebody might think hot pink is awesome, and so we have to allow for someone that comes from Washington that likes purple to have what they want, So,
No purple in my house.
well, no, I'm just saying that in general,
Yes.
you go up to, my son lives in Portland, I have a brother in Washington, where you come from, they use wild colors because they're vibrant people, so. And I think it's awesome, so. Anyway, what's your comfort level on voting on this today? Do you guys, if you guys wanna kick it down the road one more meeting, you can
We
do
only-
that
I
thing.
think we should pass and vote on it.
You okay with it?
We have talked about this forever now. I think,
You're all right.
and
with
it's
it?
also represents a compromise, a good compromise for people. I think.
When I looked at the thing with the 40 footers and the 20 footers and the smaller lots, there was 1 point difference in the survey. And the 40 footers had it by 1 whole point. And I think that this is a good compromise that we reduce those down on those small lots. So anyway, and that's why they put it 40 footers are okay, right? I'm changing it. So that's, if you guys are okay with that, that is. All right, well, let's do a motion then.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we accept ordinance 0-2020-10 shipping containers used as accessory buildings as written.
I'll second that.
And vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And motion carries. Reports. I don't know if Tish has got anything she wants to say. Ask her. Looks like she is busy reading on the computer or something.
Well, we have
There's no events going on
No
anyway.
events.
And we're not gonna have any events probably for the rest of the year. And planning commission, don't have anybody here for that. Fire department,
Yeah, we had, so burn season shut down now, just so everybody knows. We've been having red flag like for the last week, so no more burning. We got paged out to the Anderson Junction fire. We were out there for 12 hours working that fire through the night till the next day. So we were out there on a mutual aid assignment with the State Fire in Hurricane Valley. We had 4 firefighters out there on that fire for 12 hours. We'll be billing for that with the Type 6 engine.
Cool.
And the 4 firefighters.
nice job.
Also, I guess with this road construction, I guess it's kind of stopping. So just be careful with the shoulders. The shoulders are still really loose. I've had a few people with blown tires that they don't even know how it happened. I don't know what's going on with that road, with that shoulder. So a couple people have pulled off on that shoulder going a little bit fast and blew tires. So I don't know if the rocks are getting between the rims and the tread. I don't know, something weird.
They're getting
So-
windshields.
Yeah, we've been having a lot
I feel
of
sorry for the,
complaints.
I feel sorry for the motorcyclist that pulls over on that shoulder.
I feel, yeah, I've
Just a
drove by
mess.
with the engine and had people with the lights on because they try and get off on that doing 50 and just spit rocks all over.
Sure.
Everywhere. So, yeah, it's a dangerous shoulder, so be careful. I feel sorry for the guys who are gonna have to take care of it now for the rest of its lifespan, so.
It's really not road base, is it? It's like.
No, it's cinder.
Yeah, it's like a weird
Well,
compaction.
They use cinder. That's what they use.
Yes, not real good. We had a few calls other than Anderson Fire and stuff like that, and if I can, I might grab you guys for 5 minutes after the meeting to talk about that road closure on Runway. So, Apple Valley Way. So that's all I got, unless anybody has any questions.
All right.
What, did they decide that was a chain, drag chain on that?
Yep, dragged a chain up above, moved up along the ridge, and actually back down to the homes. There was probably 15 homes that we were trying to protect.
Right.
We had a lot of flare-ups through the night, probably about 6 flare-ups through the night, so it was a lot of work. And,
Pretty early in the season for that kind of thing.
oh, yeah, we just barely started, well, the state just barely started hiring people the 1st of May and just getting ramped up and trained, and all of a sudden we're getting fires, so. It's dry, nasty weather right now, so pray for rain. And that fire over there, the fuel type was all brush, all 1 hour fuels, and they had no timber. And it was moving across lava hills. That's how bad that fire was moving. It was moving across terrain that you would not think would burn. So be very careful, because our area, after seeing what that did across lava rock, our area is very scary this year.
So more susceptible than that area was.
Probably 10 times more.
Oh, yeah.
So people say it can't burn like that, and every year we see some new fire behavior that surprises us, so. That's all I got.
All right. Big Plains Water, Danny Bass.
Well, the only thing we have to report, I talked to the chairman earlier, there's nothing really exciting except we're gonna have a public hearing on the proposed water rate increase in the near future. So right now, we don't know exactly what date that is.
It'll be our next water board meeting, and that may or may not be the 4th. It could be the following. I don't know.
Okay.
We'll figure that out, but it's, if anybody wants to attend, whether Zoom or otherwise, there'll be a public hearing on that. Code enforcement, anything you want to share?
Yeah, a couple things. I had a nice discussion with the lieutenant outside. Mainly on his problem with dogs. And I had a situation in Cedar Point, a dog run loose that I addressed the owner of the dog. He denied it, but it was pretty obvious who it was. So that'll be an ongoing situation. We want to make sure everybody's safe and everybody can walk the area that they live in. And people think they're out in the boonies and they can pretty well do what they want. And with the construction people out here, you got a lot of workers out here that bring their dogs to the job site. And then they just leave it and they don't have any water. I talked to the owner of this particular dog. He did get a little excited at first, but we kind of settled down and we'll see if it's an ongoing problem. Also, these residents in Cedar Point said there was a problem on BOM land, taking landscaping lots for their private use. That's something that is a big no-no. I checked with BOM and a few other places. There's also, I talked to the lieutenant about red tags and the procedure he would like me to go through as far as people removing red tags. And we'll follow his procedure, which seems will solve the problem, at least do it. On speeders, that is a problem we have, especially on us on dirt roads, and I mean dirt roads. He says for me to file the complaint. He says what you do, you observe it and you document it, and it's more like a citizen's arrest, and the deputy will come out, and as long as you have a pretty description of the speeder and the stop sign they run through, I would be the one to fill it out. And if I had a witness, that would work better for him. And he's more than obliging to do that and work together. As far as the radar gun, originally we were told we could use radar guns, but he said they're not calibrated and they only do it in Salt Lake. So the radar gun is not something that would hold up. So that's fine. So I think that would solve a couple of problems. And by him being here, his visibility in the neighborhoods would be a big help as he drives through like they did a few years back, and maybe talk to a couple residents as they drive through if they, the residents like to. So I think that's a big help. I think that will change a lot of the people's attitudes, that they don't live in the boonies, that this is a town with rules and they need to follow the rules. But on the point, a lot of people aren't, think they don't have to have any rules. It's more of an education means sometimes than it is a violation, as long as they're aware of them. So that's just a few of the ongoing problems on the dogs seem to be a big problem, and we can't have people coming in on construction sites and letting their dogs run wild. And you need to have a tag on that dog. That's it.
All right, thanks, Rich. Anything on roads or storm drainage? Any?
No, everybody knows the road's being worked on out there, so it'll be a few more days before they can open it up, I think.
All right.
They're doing as much as they can and as quickly as they can. So they found some problems in digging up the old pipes and stuff, but hopefully in the next couple of days we'll get it settled.
Margie?
Yes,
anything on,
I have some stuff.
Oh, nice.
Okay, so, everybody knows it's mosquito season, so you need to not have any standing water. And mosquitoes are active between dusk and dawn, or dawn and dusk, whichever you wanna go. So if you go out that time of the day, try to cover up if you wanna get bit. And also, the mosquito abatement, people, they sent their West Nile virus, detector or whatever machine up to, northern Utah because they were using it to, work on COVID-19 virus, testing. And they'll be getting that back, so they'll be starting to work on West Nile virus testing pretty soon, but also there's going to be a lab down here in southern Utah for COVID-19 viruses. And so that if the testing, when testing gets, ramped up, it won't have to go up north or down to Las Vegas. They'll be able to do it here and you'll get your results back a lot faster. And that's about it.
I'm surprised it's the same people doing that.
Well, they have the same machine. They use the same machine.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't either. I don't know don't ask me what it's called.
So they ever gonna do a cedar gnat abatement?
No, they call them Vidgies and no.
I hate those things.
No,
Those things
You're
are
stuck with
nasty.
them. You're stuck with them for 8 weeks.
I already,
I already asked.
I've been eaten up already by them.
They eat me alive too.
Get out there before 9 o'clock in the morning.
We got a council down here on there. Does anybody have anything want to share, council? And so I'd like to open it up for public comments. So if there's anybody that's tuned in to public comments online, that'll be your chance.
Don't forget to unmute yourself.
See, do you want us, should we unmute Kate? Some of these iPads, or you guys are on iPads, they can do it themselves.
Yeah, they can do it themselves if they want
Looks
to.
like any of them can do it themselves. It just wants a phone number. It's a little more challenging, so. All right, I don't see anybody stepping up for public comments, so I'll close public comments. We don't need a closed session today, so last item on the agenda,
I make a motion, we adjourn tonight's meeting.
Second.
vote.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. All right, you guys, thank you. Yeah, Junior, you got something you want to?
This is kind of interesting. I don't even know.
Ben?
It is.
It's about viruses. But I'm gonna leave this one here.
Well, he's the boss, he's the head.
Interesting.
On his part.
Just the whole thing, just go all down. Yeah.
Is there any meeting?
Is it under the council? Everything all right? Stop.
Oh, yeah.